All right, we're going to talk about the last bearing in this particular setup here. We're going to talk about the tapered roller bearing. All right, so the tapered roller bearing is going to have the cup and the cone, okay, that go together. And as you can see here, we have a little bit of a cone, we have a taper here. These two things are meant to actually fit together. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a setup here on this particular block. Now, when setting these bearings up, you're going to want to take the cup, okay, and find out how it actually fits the cone, and then make sure that it gets pressed into your hub or your block accordingly. Now, I've already done it with this. We're not going to be pressing these in and out because it's a pretty difficult setup with the tools that we have available to us. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually go through doing a axle setup inside of here. So the first thing that we're going to want to take a look at is which way this thing is intended to go. And it appears that because we have this hole in here and then we have an end plate here, and this cup here, if you can see, is actually down a little farther than this one here. What we're going to do is we're going to set it up to where the shaft is going to come out of the shallow section. Therefore, we actually have a little bit of room for our nut and our fastener in here. So let's see what that looks like. Very first thing is we're going to take our axle here and we're going to slide a bearing cone on just like that. Now notice that the taper goes towards the end of the shaft. That's important because as we assemble this here, okay, it's going to fit right into our cone. The next thing is we're going to take, or I'm sorry, our cup, we're going to take our other cone and slide it over top of the shaft. Okay, I'll try to get it to where the camera can see this, over top of the shaft and into the actual cup itself. Now, sometimes when you're working in these recesses here, it's going to be just a little bit difficult to get that to happen, but I was able to gingerly put that on there. Now, the next thing is our retainer. We've already talked about retainers here. We're going to make sure that this slides over the shaft, and then we're going to take our nut and start it on the end of the shaft here, and we're going to wind that in. Now, we see that we actually have these spanner grooves here. We're not necessarily going to make a very tight assembly, but what we are going to do is we're going to make sure that we're running it up too. And you're going to notice that first and foremost, I have a lot of play in this shaft. Okay, you can see this shaft is moving, but as soon as I get this thing all the way down to where it's supposed to be, you will see that, all right, barely a little bit of torque here. There is zero perceptible play. All right, I'm kind of shaking my hand a little bit. Now, these things aren't made to necessarily be tight. Generally speaking, when these are set up, there is a torque to turn. What does that mean? That means that it should take a certain amount of torque to be able to turn the shaft when you're done. And then, of course, none of these assemblies would be complete without some kind of a manual locking of this nut. Now, again, we slid that washer, that lock washer, over top of this. The next thing that we're going to do is find the one that is the closest, okay? And we're going to get a tool like a pair of needle nose pliers, maybe even a screwdriver, get in there and bend that locking tab over onto that spanner section. And the reason being is because as this thing is rotating, it's going to loosen that nut up if there isn't something mechanical that's actually holding that. So once that is all done, then we can go ahead and complete this assembly by actually taking our cover plates here and our cover plate screws that are located over here and go ahead and stick this thing back together. Now, likewise, on this other side, there is actually a retainer / cover plate, and we're going to be sliding that over this backside here and putting the fasteners in there. And I'm sorry, sliding this over the backside, putting our fasteners in here to be able to put that together. And that right there is going to be an assembly of this block. Now, a few things about this. Industry uses these quite frequently, but also too, probably one of the most common places you're going to find this is in a wheel hub assembly for a trailer. And so essentially you're not going to have a block here that's going to be mounted. Rather, the axle is going to be fixed to the trailer, and then you're going to have a hub with the cups in there, and you're going to stick this assembly together and then, of course, tighten it up and then have a certain amount of torque to turn for that. All right, so once we're done this, we want to push our locking tab back down to get it to disengage from the actual nut, and then we can go ahead and take these components apart. We're not going to disassemble the cups from our block. I do have some spare cups over here so that we don't have to actually do that portion, but at least you get the opportunity to see how that cup and cone assembly goes together for a shaft.